set, hut, hut.
As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sound of Golden Blue football.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Now let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 50, the 10, the 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Patrick White. Touchdown, Tay Von Austin.
The Don Nehlen's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels fear to tread.
I think you think that these guys are going to fall over dead for you. Well, I got news for you. They're going to punch you right in the mouth. It's Mountaineer pride!
Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football. West Virginia football.
Leave no doubt tonight. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue. Not this night.
They've done it. They've done it. A perfect season. And the Mountaineers, for the first time in history, undefeated and untied.
Don Nehlen and his Mountaineers, for the second time, have finished a regular season with an unblemished mark.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another live stream here on the Country Roads webcast as we're going to come at you with a December 27th WVU football coaching staff update. We were hoping to get news on a defensive coordinator today. Still haven't had that come through, waiting on that, but we did get a surprise hire, one we've been waiting on, an offensive line coach, and it's a name that I think kind of came out of left field in a lot of ways, not one that had been previously reported. So interesting move here, but I think a good move overall, and we're going to discuss that here as we get going throughout the stream. But joining me here, of course, my great co-host, we got Steven in here tonight. What's going on tonight, Steven?
What's going on, everybody?
Yeah, have a good Christmas, man.
I had a great Christmas, man. Really, really good. I hope everybody in the chat did. Did you have a good Christmas?
Yeah, man. I was gonna say I was playing. I got the Halloween PS5 game. I was playing that a little bit earlier before the stream started. It's pretty fun. It's like old school side scroller, like arcade type game. It's pretty cool.
Ooh, yeah. I didn't even know that they made that game. That sounds like a fun one though.
Yeah, it's like a combo with Evil Dead, Ash vs. Evil Dead. Actually, so it's like you start and that you're in a room and you're beside two arcade machines and you get to pick which one you go into, and then you just go into that cool game of that one, which is pretty sweet. And they have like a trophy room in there and everything too for when you start getting up levels and stuff. It's pretty sweet.
It's pretty cool. I know that they made some type of game like that a few years ago. I know there was Friday the 13th, but I thought there was another one.
They made Friday the 13th, and they just came out Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I think, like last year or year before.
Yeah, so those games are definitely taking over.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'm hoping they're supposed to be making another Halloween game, supposedly. I'm hoping it's going to be like a story-based one. That's what I've always wanted.
Yeah, that will be pretty cool. I mean, I don't know why they do like Spider-Man and Batman and like anything you can think of, really. They've got a storyline game to it, so I don't know why they wouldn't do it to those.
Yeah, it needs to happen. It needs to happen for sure. But hope everyone else had a great Christmas. Throw your favorite Christmas gift in the chat if you want to, or your thoughts on anything we discuss here, any questions you got. But we're going to do a WVU coaching staff update, may talk a little bit of transfer news and stuff throughout here as well, but just hang out with you guys and catch up in the chat a little bit. I see some channel members in here. What's going on? Big Dan T throwing out membership here. We got 5 gifted memberships, so some of you guys now have access to the members only content on the channel there, courtesy of Big Dan T. Appreciate that a lot, Big Dan T. Hopefully if you're one of the 5 that got gifted, let me know in the chat. Really cool stuff there. WVU Earl, channel member in here. Happy holidays, everyone. Shaq said, don't think Allie is coming according to what he's seeing. I know it's a little bit of mixed news on that. We're going to talk on that a little bit here in a minute after we talk about the offensive line coach as well, but I still have a little bit of faith in it. I know there's another name that's kind of popped up there in addition to, who we knew was the kind of 2 guys, Jeremiah Johnson and Zach Alley, according to most reports throughout this. Now there's a third name maybe thrown into the mix. We'll address that a little bit, but I still got faith that it could potentially be Zach Alley. I've got just a good feeling about it, no real reason other than just a gut feeling. But see, Kenny got one of the gifted memberships there. That's awesome, Kenny. Appreciate that. Bama 25 got one as well. Pretty cool there. Appreciate all you guys that are in here live, though. If you are in here live while you're in here, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Helps a ton with the algorithm. And subscribe to the channel. We'll continue to cover this coaching staff as it forms and the roster as we build it as well. But let's talk about it. The potential offensive line coach, according to reports, and this broke from, you guys know, one of my favorite sources during these coaching staff builds, during coaching searches, Football Scoop. Try and check it as much as possible. And they broke this today, actually, while I was at work. But West Virginia hiring a veteran offensive line coach with vast NFL and power conference experience. And, I think a lot of people were hoping to get Rick Trickett to come along when we knew that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
All eyes were looking at like Garen Justice, and those were kind of the names you were hearing. You were hearing maybe a little bit of Ryan Stanchek. I think the Tulsa offensive lineman's coach's name was thrown around, but Jack Bicknell Jr. wasn't a name that I'd heard. But he did, cross paths with Rich Rod in the past, and I think that's the connection. But I do think this is, despite it being, a surprise hire, I think it's a good hire, bringing in Jack Bicknell Jr. because that experience at the power conference level and experience at the NFL level, as we'll get into some of this here from Football Scoop. The sources tell Football Scoop Rich Rod is tabbing longtime veteran coach Jack Bicknell Jr. as the offensive line coach for the Mountaineers, a familiar name in college and NFL circles. Former head coach at Louisiana Tech, most recently served as the offensive line coach for the Wisconsin Badgers. He also has coached at Auburn, Ole Miss, Louisville, Boston College, and North Carolina. As far as his NFL experience, let me pull up his Wikipedia here where we can kind of see a better list of that because he did have some good experience in the NFL, guiding some really good offensive lines there that had some good running games. You look when he was with the Giants, they had some good running games. You look at with the Steelers right there when that was probably in Le'Veon Bell's heyday. So offensive line coach with the Chiefs in the NFL, the Steelers, assistant offensive line coach with the Dolphins and the Giants, then served as an offensive line coach in the SEC, Ole Miss and Auburn, in the ACC at Louisville and North Carolina, and then most recently in the Big Ten in Wisconsin. So been all over, now coming to the Big 12, reportedly, according to Football Scoop here. See some of the experience there, Stephen, and, a little bit about Jack Bicknell, who I got to be honest, I didn't know a ton about before today. I've tried to do some research up on him and stuff, but I really do think that I like this hire, although, like I said, it was a surprise to me. But where are you at kind of feeling about this reported latest addition to the West Virginia coaching staff here on the offensive side?
At first I was kind of on the fence about it. I didn't really know how to feel about it. I think that was probably largely due to the fact that I like a lot of people really wanted to get Rick Trickett, along with Rich Rodriguez, but he can't pass the opportunity to coach up with his son. I understand that. But with that being said, I really wanted them to come. So I was kind of more depressed about it when I first heard about it. But as I found out about it, I'm like, man, he's got great experience. And the most glaring thing that pops out at me is, usually when we're hiring, when we was hiring head coaches here recently, these coaches are going from, whatever state to, this Louisiana Monroe to Troy, you know what I mean?
Right.
And what I like about this one is, he's got a long career of coaching, not only in the NFL, but, in power conference football. And I think, that's awesome that we're getting coaches like that, and we're not having to go to the D2 level or lower level football to get these coaches now.
Yeah, I think that definitely is the plus side of it. And to me, I think you look at it, he's a guy that, as you said, has that experience. I believe he's actually the same age as Rich Rod as well. So, up there in age a little bit, that was going to be something you had going on if you brought in Rick Trickett, who's nearly 80. So he's a little bit younger. He's 61, I believe. But as far as, the offensive hires that we made, I think the theme has been kind of going more cheap on the offensive side, which to me just screams that we're really going to spend a lot of money on these defensive staff hires, particularly the defensive coordinator. I know we've allegedly offered a lot of money to Zach Alley. If that ends up being the hire, and we have plenty of money to maybe even bring him in, and Jeremiah Johnson, that's been talked about as well, which would be home run. So I think that's where the money is going to be spent a lot, is on the defensive side. And I got to shout out my guy, Mountaineer Paul, over at Locked On West Virginia, because I think that he had a great point on this hire of Jack Bicknell Jr. because, Rick Trickett was obviously the first choice. I think that's pretty much a given. Yeah. And then maybe, like we said, Garen Justice was who you were maybe trying to get away from SMU, but SMU has a ton of money. They probably didn't want to let him leave. They just went to the playoffs with him as their co-OC and offensive line coach. So maybe that wasn't going to happen. And when Rich Rod realized that, he realized it's getting late in the game. I need to find somebody. maybe he reaches out to a guy he knows with a ton of experience that he knows can coach any type of scheme. So he knows he can do his offense. They've crossed paths before, and he knows he can do it at the power 4 level. And so he says, hey, I can get Jack Bicknell in here at least for maybe a year or two. Maybe he's a stopgap. And that's why I want to shout out Mountaineer Paul, because he was the first person I saw bring that up. Could this potentially be like a stopgap hire, because you needed to get an offensive line coach hired, you missed out on a couple of guys that you were maybe going after? Or do you think that this is someone that Rich really wanted and to be the offensive line coach? Or do you feel like this kind of like maybe a stopgap?
Well, I mean, with it being such out of nowhere hire, you got to believe that it's somebody that Rich wanted, at least at some level. It's not just I don't know if I'd call it a stopgap. I mean, I know that they're going cheaper on the offensive side so far, but I mean, that's probably largely due to the fact that, Rich Rodriguez is such a, been up to this point anyway, an offensive genius.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's probably why they're cheapening on that side of the ball. But I mean, this guy's resume speaks for itself in a lot of ways. So, I mean, I wouldn't discredit this hire just yet. I mean, it's one thing to look at where he's been. I need to look at what those offensive lines have been like. I mean, I know you mentioned, Pittsburgh Steelers with Le'Veon Bell, and that offensive line, which was a damn good offensive line and proved to be a great one later on in Le'Veon Bell's career. But I really want to look more into this guy's career and his offensive line before I make a valid assessment, to be completely honest with you. But
yeah.
I do think that they're going to try to pull out all the stops on the defensive side of the ball, and I think we need to, quite frankly.
Agreed, 100%. That's the one thing they have to nail, because you look at both the previous coaches, Holgerson and Brown. That's something that was an area of concern the whole time, was defense under both of those coaches. So I think you really got to get it this time. And if Rich Rod can get an excellent defensive coordinator, we're really cooking with gas. But I think when I look at Bicknell, the reason that I think it could be like just maybe a stopgap is the fact that when you look at his tenure, he's kind of been everywhere, like no really more than a couple of years for most, especially recently. He's really been everywhere like a year, it seems like. So, maybe he's just like a mercenary or something, a hired gun, comes in for a year when you need somebody or two and can do anything you need and does a good job with it. As you look at some of the numbers here, as I wanted to pull up his bio from where he was most recently at Wisconsin there. When he was at UNC, they ranked second in the ACC in total offense. When he was at Louisville, they were third in the ACC in rushing, 21st nationally in total offense. So he's been around, teams that have been successful. Ole Miss obviously had good offenses when he was there, as you see down there. And obviously he had Greg Little drafted as a draft pick back then in 2018. And so I think that, it's not a bad hire by any means. I think that just more than anything, I would just have it as a surprising hire. I think that some people are feeling, surprised by it as well. And maybe it's a name they didn't know, much like I didn't. So people are feeling, I've seen some people criticize the hire because of that. But I think just because it's not who we were expecting or maybe who we were wanting doesn't necessarily make it a bad hire, especially when you look at a guy that's coached in the NFL. You don't get to that level as being a bad football coach, being a bad offensive line coach. You don't get to coach multiple stops in the Power 4 being a bad offensive line coach either.
Yeah. I mean, bad coaches don't get hired again, so.
Yeah, indeed.
I don't know. I wouldn't say that he's probably going to finish his career here. I wouldn't say that. So,
no, I wouldn't say that either.
If that's what you meant by stopgap, then yeah.
But I did put it up in the chat for a poll of the night tonight, guys, in the stream, for you guys to grade the hire of Jack Bicknell for the West Virginia offensive line coach, A, B, C, or D. The 4 options there in chat. Vote on that, and we'll get the poll results here before we in the stream. But just funny little tidbit as well while we're talking about it before we wrap up talking about Jack Bicknell, and then we'll talk a little bit about the defensive coordinator, because I know I've seen some people mention it in chat there, and we'll try and get to some of y'all's comments as well. But pretty interesting. You guys may have seen on the bio there when we pulled it up that Jack Bicknell played at Boston College, was a center there. And funny enough, the famous Doug Flutie 84 Hail Mary pass to beat Miami, Jack Bicknell was on that team there. He's the one actually holding up Flutie there in the picture. Jed Renning posted that on there. So pretty interesting tidbit about the potential new offensive line coach at WVU.
That is pretty interesting. It's a small world. There's always a connection somewhere, right?
There is indeed. Okay, so seeing some people talking about defensive coordinator in the chat, and obviously I think a lot of smoke, last night, yesterday really started coming around that Zach Alley could potentially be the hire. I think, 247 had a report there that West Virginia had a good feeling about him potentially being the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach, and we were potentially hoping to hear about that today after Oklahoma's bowl game. Haven't heard anything on that front yet. Louisiana Tech plays their bowl game tomorrow. We know Jeremiah Johnson was another candidate for the defensive coordinator job, but I think one reason that some people are starting to think that Zach Alley may not be taking the job is just because some information that came out after the Oklahoma game where he was kind of asked directly about the West Virginia rumors. And I'm going to share this post here on social media from an Oklahoma reporter talking a bit about this. And I think this is why some people are kind of feeling like maybe he's not going to be coming to WVU. But to me, I don't really take this that way. It doesn't discourage me on that front. I think it could still potentially happen. But as he was asked about this in the post-game radio interview, Zach Alley says, every year there's going to be something that comes up with jobs and whatnot, man, but I'm just excited about our team. I think coming back next season, we're going to have a great opportunity to be successful, be a top defense in the country, and hopefully we got some young guys who can come along to help us do that. So those were his response when he was asked about rumors. And I think for me, the way I look at this is no one is going to come out and say, "No, yeah, man, I'm out. I'm leaving." For one, you're not going to say that. Yeah. And you're probably also not going to say, "No, I'm definitely staying here," just due to the fact of how much money is involved, how much money West Virginia is trying to give him, and how much money he could potentially get from Oklahoma could help his agent to maybe get him a raise there too. You know, that's always in play here as well. So he's not probably going to come out and directly say that. So I think that's a couple of things you need to take into account with this. So to me, this doesn't discourage me from Zach Alley potentially coming. Now, does it mean he's definitely coming? No. Does it mean definitely not coming? No. You know, I don't think it's really definitive either way, in my opinion, Stephen. But what about you? Does this, hit you in any way different than it hits me?
I don't know if it's definitive. I think it definitely does sound negative if you're a West Virginia fan, but I don't know. I think you're right. I don't think any coach in the country is going to come out and outright say whether one way or the other. I mean, not to bring it up, but just the one thing I think of is when they used to ask Rich Rodriguez, "Are you leaving? What about the Michigan room?" He's like, "Look, I love being at West Virginia. This is my home." He's like, "This is where I want to be." That's what he said. And long story short, y'all know the rest. So yeah. I don't know. Never can read too much into what they say in these types of interviews or press conferences or what have you, especially at this point in the year, and especially. With them, was this after the game today?
Yeah, this was after the bowl game.
Okay, well.
And I mean, but two words come to mind: coach speak.
Yeah. Well, and they
gotta worry about that.
They just lost. They just lost the game to Navy too. So I mean, like he's not going to come out and outright say.
Exactly. That's how I'm feeling about it. So I think that Zach Alley may potentially still be in play. But if we don't hear anything about that, in the next 24 to 48 hours at max, it's probably not going to be Zach Alley. But I do think I don't think I'm going to rule him out just yet.
I'm not going to rule him out, but I don't know. I'm kind of right there with you. If it doesn't happen within the next 2 days, then probably not going to get him because that window's closing fast.
But would be a super exciting hire, would be a home run hire, would probably be the highest paid assistant contract in school history from, reports according to everything that's kind of come out on it. So that's, how big they're swinging for the fences at least. And I think you're glad to see West Virginia really going after some guys and really trying to do some things to make the defense be stout. And just some numbers on what Zach Alley did this year in his first season, as the play caller there. I know Oklahoma has 3 Cody C's, but he is the play caller and was kind of the one at the helm there. They finished the regular season top 15 in run defense, only allowing 106 yards per game. They allowed fewer passing yards this year than they did in the year previous. They also allowed nearly 70 yards fewer per game than they did the year previous. Limited teams to 22 points per game during the regular season. And they also finished the regular season 7th in defensive efficiency, according to ESPN. So you can see why people are really excited and hope to get Zach Alley. And he's super young. I mean, he's younger than I am. He's like 30 years old, I think, 30 or 31. So, super young guy with a ton of potential.
I don't know if he's my – I think, Josh had a good point in the chat just now. I think Jamal Adias definitely deserves a phone call. Yeah. I've been a fan. I mean, he's been my number 1 favorite player ever.
I've been surprised that he hasn't been brought up more in the search. I think that it could be because the Bills are going to be in the playoffs, and it might, the time may mess up with like the timing because they really probably couldn't wait that long. Yeah, maybe that's probably the only thing I could think of because where he hasn't really been brought up a ton.
Man, that would be my hire. I've said that since day one though.
So potentially for the defensive coordinator. I don't think we're ruling Zach Alley out just yet. Some people are feeling a little bit discouraged about it. We'll see what happens. I think he's still in play. Obviously, Jeremiah Johnson, very much still in play. You've seen Rivals reporting still yet on their hot board that they feel like he's coming after their bowl game on the 28th. So does that mean he's coming alongside Zach Alley and you get both of those guys, which would be absolutely phenomenal? Or does that mean he's coming, just to be a secondary coach or to, be a co-DC? Who knows? We'll see what happens with Jeremiah Johnson as well. But those are the two big names that we knew about. But earlier tonight, after, that came out about Zach Alley saying that and some people started getting discouraged, I don't know if it was because of that or after that or whatever, but I started seeing another name pop up that people were talking about for defensive coordinator. And I've seen some of you guys bring it up in the chat, and I think it does have a Rich Rod connection. And I think when you look at the hire of Jack Bicknell Jr., I think it's why some people may be bringing this name up. And that's Mike McIntyre, who a lot of people may remember as the head coach of Colorado previously from back 2013 to 2018. Then he was the head coach of FIU recently, but they just let him go, fired him about a month ago. So hasn't been that successful as a head coach, but he was a good defensive coordinator multiple times in his career. Similar age to Rich Rod, similar age to Jack Bicknell, who we just hired. And he does have the crossover with Rich Rod in 2019 when Rich Rod got back and was an offensive coordinator at the Power 4 level there for Ole Miss. The defensive coordinator was Mike McIntyre. So there is obviously a connection and history there. So you can see why this could potentially maybe be a possibility that's starting to pop up now. And we'll see if it has any legs or not. Maybe it's a backup plan if Alley does indeed turn things down or something that they could be looking at. We'll see, but it's a name that I've seen come up, so I did want to mention here just in case, because I think the offensive line hire proved to us that there sometimes may be a name that pops out of left field that we really don't know about, and Mike McIntyre's name hadn't been brought up throughout this defensive coordinator candidacy, but now all of a sudden it's popping up. So did want to bring it up here just because it could be relevant. But out of the three, who would be your preference, or would you be happy with any of the three, Stephen?
Out of Alley, McIntyre, and what was the third option?
Jeremiah Johnson from Louisiana.
Jeremiah Johnson. Oh man, Alley would probably be my preferred option out of the three. Yeah. Gosh, I don't know. If we get McIntyre, we're gonna go from one of the youngest coaching staffs to
it. Yeah, I was gonna say then you get a little bit up there in age with some of the hires, but I like the youth of Alley. I think he's definitely runaway favorite for me. I think he's one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. So if you could get him, that would be amazing. And I think, to me, I talked about it last coaching staff update I did. The pipe dream scenario is to get Zach Alley as defensive coordinator, and then bring in Jeremiah Johnson as well from Louisiana Tech to, coach a secondary, maybe co-DC or something, to get both of those guys. Now, that would be what you talk about, a grand slam, knock it out of the park higher. But I think that those are three good options. If those are, kind of the three options that they're looking at, I don't think that either one would be a bad hire.
I don't know. No, I guess they're three pretty good options. But, I mean, like we said earlier, if you're going to be spending a lot of money on your defensive coordinator, then you better make sure it's a good hire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You spend a lot of money and the product's not there on the field, then we're right back to square one where we were 6 years ago.
Very much so. So I want to get to some of your all's comments, and then we want to talk a little bit about some transfer news a little bit here towards the tail end, and then we will, of course, share the poll results before we wrap up. But the last thing is I just want to kind of update the reported coaching staff right now. Like I said, nothing official, nothing's come out, no official releases from WVU yet. But what we have reported is Blaine Stewart being retained with an unassigned role. It'd be interesting to see what his role ends up being, since they've reportedly bringing over a tight ends coach from Jack State. But Chad Scott reportedly returning as running backs coach. We'll see if that's his only title. Then you have Michael Nicewonder coming over from Jack State to coach tight ends. Ryan Garrett coming over from Jack State to coach receivers. And now Jack Bicknell reported to be the offensive line coach. There's the offensive staff. And it's also, I believe, that Rhett Rodriguez is going to have a spot on there, maybe as the quarterback's coach. We'll see what ends up happening there when they finalize the offensive staff. But on the defense, all you really know right now is William Green as the defensive line coach. Has been the only reported hire there. So that's kind of where we're standing with the coaching staff currently, and we're looking for that defensive coordinator hire. I think it's going to come in the next 24 to 48 hours potentially, and then after that the staff will wrap up shortly thereafter. So I think in the next week we will probably have this coaching staff complete, in my opinion. But any other thoughts there on coaching staff or anything, Stephen, before we get to some comments here?
Yeah, I'm really intrigued to see where Blaine goes. I think to my knowledge, he was an analyst for the Steelers, tight ends coach for us.
I think he worked with the receivers some with the Steelers too. So
is that what?
It's
okay,
interesting. He's really worked with receivers and tight ends, and looks like both those roles are filled. So I'm wondering, special teams, maybe? I don't know.
Possibly. What all did his dad coach before?
His dad was special teams coordinator at one point.
Was it special teams the whole time though? But
no, I think
he was there with Rich the whole time.
I think he was he quarterbacks or something towards the tail end? I believe he was
that's
something on offense towards the tail end. I
that's
think
what it was, because he was Pat's coach. That's why they were so close. Like
it makes sense. Then.
That makes sense. But
but I know he did do special teams at one point. So once I remember that, I was like, maybe that's what they're going to do with Blaine. Then maybe they're going to let him do something on special teams. We'll see. But I'm glad Blaine's sticking around. I think that's big.
I think we both were very vocal about that. That was the one guy I cared about him retaining on this staff. Obviously, Chad Scott, I was really wanting him to retain him. Glad they did that also. But Blaine was my one guy just for, Blaine's a good coach, but it was, sentimental reasons more so.
Sentimental reasons, right? For sure. Yeah. And, Chad Scott was always one of my favorite assistants. So then when you get the news of him, returning a little bit later in the game, deciding to retain him, I think that was still big as well. So as these hires become official, the ones that have been reported and others that haven't came out yet, we'll still touch on them here forever, as this builds throughout the offseason here on the CRW moving forward. Be a live stream pretty much every day or every other day, covering this staff and covering this roster. And we're going to talk some transfer portal news before we wrap up, but let's get to some comments before we do that. I see Bama 25, now a channel member here, says Mike McIntyre, new DC, heard it here first. So he's feeling pretty confident about Mike McIntyre.
Yeah.
Sean Murray says, hope you all had a Merry Christmas. Appreciate that, Sean, channel member here now. Tommy's still kind of holding out hope like I am, and maybe it's wishful thinking. Maybe it's trying to speak it into existence, but he says, call me crazy, but he still has a feeling we're getting Allie. And that's kind of where I'm at. I've just got a weird gut feeling that he is still in play. That's just, that's all I can explain it as.
I hope you guys are right.
I'd love to see it. Don Johnson says, Merry Christmas. Well, appreciate you, Don. Sean says he got his Spot the Ball shirt. Nice, Sean. Glad to see a lot of people buying those NIL shirts. Steven's got his on.
I knew everybody would go for the Spot the Ball. I knew everybody would go for Spot the Ball, so I got the bring back glossy helmets, and then I got the hold the rope in there.
I'm hoping if enough people get that bring back glossy helmets shirt, that'll maybe give them incentive, and we'll see them come back, because I don't think they'll come back for 2025, but maybe we can get them back for 2026.
I think if Ren is he's a man of the people. He'll get a job. If they're selling them in the NIL shop, you got to believe that at least
that's a good point, especially when all those were going directly to Country Roads Trust.
Yeah, I mean, they never had a shirt in the NIL that said, wear black uniforms.
True.
You know what I mean? He heard that, so I mean, you got to believe if it's big enough to put on a T-shirt that can sell in that shop, then Ren's he knows about it.
Yeah, he does. Bama 25 says Garen Justice was waiting for an interview for an FCS head coaching job. He was offered. Feel like Rich Rod realized he couldn't wait any longer and pulled the trigger on Bicknell. It's possible, Bama 25. It's possible. Yeah. I knew getting Garen Justice was going to be, a tough ask as well, but I still was holding out hope for it. But I do like the Bicknell hire. Like I said, it's just surprised me, but I like it.
Yeah, even if it is, just a potential 1 or 2 seasons that we get him and then he bolts, then I mean, it's a good hire, I think. It'll at least solidify our offensive line for the next couple of years. Which, I mean, honestly, it's going to depend on that side, who we get through the portal right now, because, all these guys jumping ship and leaving and going in the portal, something that we expected, but, it's still it's stressful. That's the most stressful thing for me along on a football team. Everybody talks about a quarterback. My most stressful, I guess, unit, not even position, is the entire offensive line. If you don't have an offensive line, you can't do anything.
Man, I don't know. Just while you're on the topic, I'm gonna go ahead and pull this up, because I don't think I've showed it to you yet. But it's crazy, because I didn't realize until I started doing some of these roster updates here, which I'm gonna start doing more of in January. But if you look at our roster and what we have left, given that no one that's in the portal decides to come back, we're returning Jaheim White and Rodney Gallagher as 2 starters on offense. And we are returning
Rodney Gallagher. I thought he went in the portal.
No, Rodney Gallagher's staying.
So he backed out of the portal?
No, he didn't ever go.
I swear I seen that he entered the portal.
Traylon Ray did, and Hudson Clement, and Preston Fox retired as well.
I will take it with a grain of rice because I did see it on Facebook, so it could have been somebody just posting bull.
It's possible. You know how Facebook is. So 2 starters returning on offense, and Rodney Gallagher really didn't start until the back half of the season. So, Jaheim and Rodney, 2 starters on offense. And then on defense, Eddie V, if you want to consider him, even though he was, missed most of this year, that's 1. And then Reed Carrico, and that's it. So potentially 2 starters basically on both sides of the football that'll be returning. In the offensive line, definitely going to have to bring some guys in. I know we have a lot of freshmen coming in. We have Walter Youngbear that's committed from Tulsa already at the transfer portal, but I think there's going to be more offensive linemen we go after. As you look here, virtually no experience returning on the offensive line, say for Xavier Bosley, who did start for Rich Rod at Jack State. Landon Livingston played some this year, but offensive line, not a lot there.
Yeah. Landon Livingston's, I think he'll be okay. I think he'll progress very well, as well as Xavier Bosley. I think him being, played under Rich Rod previously, that'll obviously help him a lot. But like I said, it'll be interesting to see what Bicknell brings in as a scheme and what he wants to run. If he wants to run a pulling guard or that was what I think made those offenses so lethal back in the day with Pat and Slayton was. The guard play that we have. You had Dan Moses at center. That was obviously, key. But the guard play was phenomenal. I mean, I would hate to see a pulling guard coming from West Virginia's side back in the day.
And great blocking on the perimeter by the receivers. The receivers were always excellent blockers.
Oh yeah, Pat was an excellent blocker. He got a highlight of coming and blindsiding the hell out of a guy.
That's true, man. So it's going to be completely new roster next season for West Virginia, more or less. Just potentially a couple starters. You're looking at less than 5 starters returning total, even including special teams, because Ollie Straw is the only one coming back. New kicker, new long snapper as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how that builds. But as far as transfers, the only update I've had, I've tried to cover all the offers that I've seen go out throughout this, but there was one I saw go out today that I hadn't covered previously, so I wanted to share. West Virginia offered a Georgia Southern transfer linebacker, Marcus Watson Trent, who has nearly 400 career tackles in 4 years, from Pennsylvania, so close to home. So there's one to keep an eye on. And then Steven, since we haven't had a chance to really talk about it, I want to pull up the transfer portal tracker and just get your thoughts on some of the transfers that have committed to WVU thus far. We have a lot of other guys that we're after. We can touch on some of those that I'm hoping to see come in after this, but I want to get your thoughts on kind of the guys West Virginia's brought in. We got Jordy Scruggs, defensive back, coming in from South Alabama. West Virginia beat out Colorado to get him. You got Man Singleton coming in from Eastern Michigan there, the receiver. Walter Youngbear, one of my favorites that we've got committed thus far in the offensive line. Gerard Bowie from Jack State, and Jacob Barrett from Jack State, 2 Martinsburg guys. But what are your thoughts on the transfers West Virginia has committed thus far?
Well, I like them all. I've only found so this Jordan Scruggs guy, he's the most interesting one for me because I'm paying obviously a lot more attention to the defensive side of the ball. Right now, because I strongly feel like on the offensive side of the ball, fingers crossed, Nico does continue to decide to stay, which I believe so. All signs point to him deciding to stay at this point. I know everybody. I love that Khalil Wilkins is here. I think that he's going to be the next one up. But a lot of people I think they are going to bring in another quarterback to give Nico some competition. The way that they talk, which is only a good thing. But on offense, Nico's our guy. So that doesn't make, and obviously now that we have Jaheim White and Rodney Gallagher still staying, it makes me even more excited for the offensive side of the ball and see what Rich can do with them. But defensively, I think we're really going to need some guys. But Jordan Scruggs, the few highlights that I could find on the guy, looks elite. I like him. I think he'll definitely be used the right way. But defensive highlights, in my opinion, are hard to read because I thought Aiden Garnes and Garnett Hollis were going to be some studs when they came in, and they just did not do what they did. I just don't think
they were a fit for what we were doing. Which who knows what the hell we were doing defensively, scheme wise, anyways. But I just think
you got to have guys in the right place.
Yeah. Nobody knew what was going on that side half the time. Nobody could get the calls in even on that side half the time. So that was kind of part of the problem. But I agree with you. I think Jordy Scruggs is going to be a good one. I think he's got a good chance to be the starting slot corner. Man Singleton, I think maybe could factor in the special teams game. I liked what I saw in the few highlights that I shared on his commitment video. I think Young Bear is going to help us on the interior, whether it's at guard or center, which is great. Great name, and he looked super physical on some of the highlights I shared of him. And of course, the two Martinsburg guys, you love getting the in-state guys to return home.
Oh yeah,
Jacob Barrick, we need to help us, I think, in the blocking game, especially after Traylon Davis deciding to not return. So you really don't have a lot of experience there at tight end either. And then Bowie, I think, is really cool because, being down here from where we're from, him having played at Concord and then worked his way up to Jack State, then really getting involved 100-plus yards in their bowl game, and then is a speedy guy. So I think, we could use him as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's awesome having the Concord connection. I think when you told me that, I was like, wait, what? Concord?
Yeah, it's pretty
then
crazy.
He went to Jacksonville and now back up. I mean, I mean, that's definitely a journey right there. That's probably the most unique journey for West Virginia player. I don't know, maybe not the most unique, but
it's up there.
For us here, it definitely, like, I don't know, it's kind of ironic.
Yeah, coming from here, it definitely is.
Balls out.
But
hopefully he's the next Tutty.
Hey, that'd be nice. Hey, at least, we got two Martinsburg guys coming in for the one potentially going out, and I still got my fingers crossed. There's a chance maybe we can get him back out.
I was going to say, we still could get Huddy back. We still could.
Still possible.
I think it's definitely, people can say what they want, but I think it's definitely, I'm going to kind of be careful how I say this. I think it's a good thing that he's getting offers the way that he's getting them, even if it is from an SEC school that, buys all their players. This kid went from a walk-on. He paid his way onto the roster at WVU, and now he's getting offered, what he's getting offered by Texas A&M. What was it, $300,000 a house or something?
Yeah, something like that was what was reported, I believe.
I mean, that's whether you love it or hate it for WVU. I mean, I obviously hate it for WVU, and I want him back here, and I hope that we can match that or whatever we need to do to get him here. But I mean, you can't say enough about how awesome that is for Hudson Clement personally.
True.
I don't know. I'm happy for the kid.
Well, I think retaining Chad Scott can't hurt that your chances there as well of potentially getting him back, maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true too. I think that was probably a lot to do with that,
and to keep Jaheim White around, yeah,
and to keep Jaheim. I'll keep a lot of the guys. Honestly, I think a lot of those guys on that offense are really close with Chad Scott.
I do too.
He's a good coach, but he's, I don't know. You got to have those relationships there.
For sure. So that's kind of our thoughts. You guys have heard mine. Wanted to get some of Steven's thoughts on the guys that we have committed thus far. But as far as potential targets, I know I've got a couple of guys that I really like. Fred Davis, the cornerback from Jack State, I hope comes. But, two of my top remaining targets that I really want to see us land that are in the portal are the Cam Vaughn, the wide receiver from Jack State. And then I know we love Nico, and I think that Nico potentially probably will be the starter. He's kind of the incumbent there, but you do got to add another quarterback there because you only have the redshirt freshman, the true freshman behind Nico. So I think to me, it's Hoss Haney. Hoss Haney's my number one quarterback I want to see West Virginia land out of the portal. Super fast guy, hasn't thrown any passes yet at the college level, but you look at him, number 12 quarterback in the country coming out of high school last year. He has interest in WVU. WVU has interest in him, and you look in your college football 25 game and he's 91 speed or whatever it is, and you think that that's a tailor-made fit for the Rich Rod offense. And even if Nico is the starter, that's a guy you could play, in spots.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if Nico's your starter, you're still going to have a guy that, going to play at least once or twice a game. You know what I mean? They even did that with Nico every now and then. Not every game, but at least every other game, Nico's coming in for one or two plays a game. Or, God forbid Nico goes down, you're going to have a viable option to fill that void. So definitely, I mean, like you got to go after somebody that's, worth it.
Yeah, indeed.
You can't just get whoever.
So those are kind of some of my top potential targets for West Virginia that I hope that they, go after. But if you don't get Hoss Haney, there was another quarterback's name that I saw brought up on 247. I think was the first one that I saw bring this name up that I hadn't heard before. But it's from Ferris State, which is at the Division II level. But he was, one of the finalists for what is essentially the Heisman. I think it's called the Harlan Hill Trophy there at the Division II level. But his name's Trinidad Chambliss. And he's another dual threat guy, super fast, but he can throw it, he can run it. And so I think he would be a good fit. And you look at a guy like, I know people would be like, what, Ferris State? But, you remember Cam Ward started at Incarnate Word. So you never know. There's good players anywhere. And if you need to add another quarterback, at least he has experience right there to be another experienced one to potentially look at. So to me, those are the two QBs, I think, Trinidad Chambliss and Hoss Haney. But those are some of my favorite targets. And, of course, Cam Vaughn. I really, 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 really want to land Cam Vaughn.
Cam Vaughn will be a good – I don't know. You mentioned Incarnate Word, and I got off on it made me lose my train of thought. Because Incarnate Word, man, I've heard that school mentioned so many times, and since Cam Words came out of there, and I don't know if it's because of that or if he actually put them on the map and they're just that competitive now to why I'm hearing about them so often.
I just think they're kind of new because I swear it wasn't until within the past 10 years was when I started hearing about Incarnate Word. Before then, never heard about him. So I feel like they're fairly new or something.
Yeah, they have to be. I don't know. There's a lot of schools I could tab that to though that I've never heard about them ever in my life, and I've followed college sports my whole life. And then you don't hear about a school until whatever point, and then you just don't ever stop hearing about them.
Yeah, that's true. It really is. It's weird like that, especially I feel like that happens a lot in college basketball because there's so many more teams. Somebody pops up in the tournament every year. I'm like, who?
Yep.
Filled out my bracket I don't know, but I might pick them.
Yeah, and it's always weird because sometimes a lot of schools they just have a basketball team, they don't have a football team, and it trips me out whenever I try. I realize it between when I realized Georgetown didn't have a football team, I was like, wait, why?
It's they probably just have a club team or something. Yeah, I know a lot of teams that don't usually just have that or something like that. So I don't know. It's weird. It's weird for sure.
Very weird.
But definitely, that's kind of some thoughts on transfer targets. You got anything else there, Steven? Any other guys you want to mention? That you'd like to see West Virginia target or anything like that?
Not for this class.
All right, save that for later in the semester for you guys. But let's see. Bama 25 says, who was your source for the McIntyre information? Want to see if it's the same. I think I saw it floating around on 247 Sports message board, I believe, is where I saw some people mention that. And that's the first time I'd seen the name mentioned and them talking about the ties with Rich Rod, I believe. W. Mount Larry Kenny says his first option for DC would be Zach Alley. Agreed. Yep. Agreed. Let's see. Did Corey McIntyre leave? No, he's still around as far as I know. Up to this point, I think he's going to be a big time player on that defensive line if he is still around so far. Hey, what's going on, Paul? Good to see you in here, man. I was just talking a bit ago when we were talking about the offensive line coach hire. But appreciate you, man. Appreciate you.
As always.
Hey, Mountaineer Paul, with some good info here on Hoss Haney, and he was one of the first ones that I saw, do a video talking about the mutual interest there, and he says, according to his agent, we're number one on his list currently still, so that's big time news for Hoss Haney, one of the two quarterbacks we were talking about there, along with Trinidad Chambliss, but Hoss Haney, definitely one of my favorite transfer targets. I'm hoping that we get a chance to land, man. Appreciate you hopping in, Paul. And appreciate everybody that came in here live and chatted tonight. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button whether you're in here live or on a playback. That helps with the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel. We'll continue to cover the coaching staff as it builds and the roster as it builds. And if you want to support us monthly, we always appreciate that as well. You get that WVU football bonus content. If you do, you get a ton of it, a lot of extra stuff there for you, and helps keep the mics recording and the cameras rolling here, and we appreciate that. But the fast, easy, free way is just hit that like button and subscribe here to the channel. Catch up with you guys in the chat, and then we'll get ready to wrap up before too much longer. But we do got some poll results to cover too before we wrap up. I see Pokemon Kid Entertainment hopping in here. Appreciate you, Pokemon Kid Entertainment, with the $1 super chat there. He asks, have you guys heard about Neil's son coming to WVU? Neil's son. Who do you mean Pokemon Kid Entertainment? Not sure who you're referencing. I know if maybe you're talking about Rich's son, because I've heard that Rich's son may be a member of the staff in some capacity. But appreciate the super chat, man. Appreciate the support. Big Dan T from Monroe County, channel member here. You have a great night as well. Always appreciate
not too far away from us.
Yeah, right here, bottom part of the state.
Yep, Mercer County.
Oh, Noel Devine's son is who he's talking about.
Oh, okay.
I haven't heard anything definitive, but when Rich Rod got the job, I was hoping that would be a possibility, and I was wondering if he was going to hit the portal. Hadn't seen where he'd hit the portal yet, but if you do see him go into the portal, I think there's a great chance West Virginia would end up with Andre Devine.
Yeah.
Got you there.
I think Noel's definitely, I don't know, maybe he's healed from when he was mad at WVU.
Yeah, well, I think it would be like maybe poetic justice for he would feel like in a way if he does end up at WVU anyway after all that, you know.
Yeah. Well, hopefully,
we'll see if that happens. I wouldn't be against it though. West Virginia with a lot of young guys at running back behind Jaheim White, and at least Noel Devine's son Andre would be a guy, a second-year player, potentially. We'll see what happens there. Legacy guy you could add. But as far as the poll results, guys, wanted to go ahead and end that and discuss those. I asked you guys, how would you grade the hire of Jack Bicknell to potentially be WVU's offensive line coach? The options were A, B, C, and D, and you guys said it's a B hire for you guys, 48%. A was 27%, C 16%, and D 6%. Stephen, what would be your grade there, A, B, C, or D on the hire? Would you go agree with the chat there and go B, or what would you think?
I'd probably go B. Yeah, I'd agree.
I think that's where I'd be as well. So at least we're in agreement with you guys. We would all be at B.
I see
what I did there?
See how Cruz handles? That's how he does things right there. He just makes them up as he goes, man.
Oh man, it just comes to me. It comes to me, man.
He's a chef. He's a lyricist, a wordplay artist. It's just podcast creator.
Pokemon Kid Entertainment says he is in the portal talking about Andre Devine. So, hey, maybe it is some real possibility. If so, I'd love to get a chance to report on that for a transfer portal update here in the near future. That'd be great. But for now, what we do know is, according to Football Scoop, Jack Bicknell will join the West Virginia staff as the offensive line coach. If we get any news on a potential DC tomorrow or any other staff members, we'll cover that again and be back with you guys live again tomorrow. Most likely you'll see one of our faces again tomorrow on here talking about that. Maybe both of us again. We'll see what happens, how schedules line up and things like that. But nonetheless, we'll be covering it as it happens, whether it's staff movement, transfer portal movement, whatever you got. So keep it locked in. Subscribe to us here at the CRW. But that's pretty much all I got, Stephen. You got any final thoughts on anything you want to add here at the tail end?
Nope. Hopefully we just hear about a DC hire that we can talk about in the next few days.
Yeah. That's what we're all waiting on pins and needles for, I think.
Also looking for the basketball team in a few days to shock the world and go out there to Lawrence, Kansas and get a dub.
Oh yeah, that's right. We got to talk about that game against Kansas.
Yes,
we'll do it on a live stream. Maybe tomorrow or next day. We still got 2-3 days away from that. It's 31st, right?
31st,
yeah. Yeah.
We'll on ESPN Plus. What kind of travesty is that?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
ESPN Plus.
Yeah, that's dirty, man. You got to put that game on ESPN.
ESPN Plus, let me say, is good for a lot of things. I think it's good for things like, you can watch. We could watch them here in West Virginia, but I'm saying, if you move potentially for a job or something to California, just let's say for a scenario, you can still watch the Mountaineers play Mercyhurst, and you can watch North Carolina Central play West Virginia. You don't got to be blacked out just because you live in a different area now.
That's a good point.
But then you got stuff like this that's aggravating when, a potential primetime matchup, I would say, at least a primetime Big 12 matchup, with the record of the two schools so far and how they both played. It should be played on ESPN.
Conference opener.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. I think that's the things that really irk me about ESPN Plus in these subscription services.
Same, man. Same. What can you do?
What can you do, I guess. I'll let you guys go to bed now. Sorry.
No, we're going to make them hear about it some more. We're going to make them listen to us.
You're going to sit here and you're going to listen.
You're going to listen. You're going to listen to mom and dad fight. Let the boy watch.
Let the boy watch.
Let the boy watch. Nah, man, but it's been fun. Really appreciate getting to chat with you guys, everyone that was in here live, and appreciate Steven getting to hop on tonight. Really cool stuff, man. And yeah, hope everyone had a great holiday, and hope everyone's loving the staff that we have reported thus far, and hopefully we have even better news on the horizon. Like Steven said there, I'm hoping that defensive coordinator news comes out tomorrow, and we can be live again to talk about that. But that's pretty much it, man. That's pretty much it. Anything else? Nope. You done? We're good. All right. That's it then, guys. We're going to wrap this one up for our December 27th coaching staff update here. Jack Bicknell reportedly joining the staff as offensive line coach, and we'll see what else happens on the staff, transfer portal-wise. Any of that we'll be covering here. So stick with us. Hit the like button before you head out. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. For my co-host, Steven, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.